all things talent.
Sorry.
That's okay. Well, my focus is related to all things talent and organizational effectiveness. I have over 20 years of leadership experience with various companies, one being with HSBC, where I met Christine Fuchsia-Lear, and we worked together on many projects. And I think I've also supported you as an HR business partner as well at one point in time in my career. But yeah, not only HSBC, just assuming other leadership roles across other companies. And I think for me, foundationally, where I was groomed in leadership is with my 24 years in the military experience. So I am really glad and honored to be here as well. So thanks.
Thank you. So like I said, I have either worked with these women or had some kind of connection with these women throughout my various careers. And when I think about this topic, they always come to mind. And like I said, I follow you all's career, and I'm always impressed with the things that I see and the changes that we are making. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. The first thing I want to ask you guys is, what do you think, what is your view on the state of leadership today? And that's overall leadership. And I'm going to start this off with Miss Margaret, and then I'll go around circle.
So I was thinking about this question this morning about the state of leadership, and one part of me is very cynical about leadership at this point, that on the national level, our national leaders are not providing any good examples of leadership. Like, it's hard to find on that national, maybe political, social level to find really great examples of good leadership, of bringing us together as people. I think COVID has a lot to do with that as well. I think there was an isolation created by COVID that hasn't always resulted in us coming together as a people, even though we're longing to be together. I think the long isolation created also some pent-up anger and frustration at what's going on, and created people in a lot of silos, created a sense of isolation for them. On the other hand, on the flip side, when I look at leadership, like within my company or the opportunities I'm being given, I'm really excited about where we're going. When I look to our youth, I get really excited about the things they're doing and the things they're taking on and the leadership that they're displaying for us. So I would say that it's kind of a mixed bag where leadership is right now, that there's a lot to be really cynical about, but there's also some hopeful signs out there. It's exciting, even on the national level. We can't, regardless of party or affiliation, you can't get away from how exciting it is that we have a woman for the first time as vice president. That's a really exciting thing to look at, regardless of your partisan politics, regardless of how you may feel about her personally. That's an exciting milestone. And we're seeing more of those, and that's an exciting thing to see. But there's also some reasons to be pessimistic about where our leadership is as well. So I'm sort of feeling like there's a mixed bag.
All right, Ms. Shanta, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Margaret more on that question. But I do think fundamentally leadership hasn't changed. Like, you still, from a leadership standpoint, need to have those skills of communicating, driving change, being adaptable, and things of that nature. I think where we get hung up is, to Margaret's point, the examples that we see portrayed from leaders. Everybody has their own idea and interpretation of what leadership should be. And sometimes the exceptions become the norm, and it may not be in a positive, it's shaded in a positive light. But what I can also say is that, I do feel that it has shifted over the past 10 to 20 years, shifting from more of an autocratic leadership, where leaders were able to make, or tended to make, decisions more so solely on their own, and make decisions and portraying their vision and their mission. And now we're more so in a more of a collaborative environment now, where we have to be more people oriented, bringing the team along, thinking about change management and bringing other ideas into the fold, so it's not just all your own. So I think it's changed within the last 10 to 20 years.
Okay, very good. Chrissy, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree that it's really evolved over the past few years, the expectations of what a leader needs to bring. And I've thought a lot about it this year, like, what does it really mean to be an inclusive leader? Because that's an area with my company that I'm really trying to spend more time on, is working with leaders of organizations on how do they develop those new competencies that are really required going forward. And some of those are things like, how do you build an environment where diverse teams and diverse perspectives are welcomed and encouraged and brought out? And how do you engage on like societal issues and discussions, which in the past, that was very separate, but now, leaders need to be able to really be able to have those tough conversations that go beyond the walls of an organization or company. Having a lot of empathy is another trait that's really important with leaders now. And then bringing kind of your vulnerable, authentic self, which is really challenging, I think, for some leaders to open up and create that environment where people really trust each other and feel like they can bring their best self to work as well. So I think there's a lot of new traits that are really required of leaders, and it's definitely a changing landscape, as everyone has said.
Agreed. Miss Marilyn, what do you think?
Yeah, I would echo what's already been said, and I won't say a ton more to repeat what's been said, but I will say that what's changed dramatically about leadership, I think, has come from the fact that there are so many more women leaders over the last 25 or 30 years. I think we bring a lot of compassion, that empathy that Chrissy was just talking about. I think that we are now in an environment, I've worked largely in the last several years in IT, and certainly collaborative work has completely revolutionized the way in which a lot of work is being done in the IT space. And so I think, as was also said, I'm encouraged by the youth. I have some young nieces who blow me away with their confidence and what it is I see that they bring to the table in their respective companies where they work. So I am encouraged that, women leaders are going to make an even bigger impact moving forward, and grateful that we were able to sort of pave the way in the last X number of years. I won't say how many years to do so.
Very cool. All right, Giovanna, what are your thoughts?
All right, well, similar to Marilyn, I don't want to repeat all of the good thoughts that have been said, but I think there was a couple of things that I do want to just highlight that I heard. One is around authenticity, and the other is around trust. And for me, what I've learned and what I find as the key is really trusting myself and my judgment. And if I'm unable to be authentic with someone I see as a leader, then to me, there's a gap. And understanding that gap is something that we all have to navigate around, right? Just because you don't agree with someone or you don't like someone, that doesn't necessarily mean you can just walk out, right? In some cases you can, but in some cases you can't, and you just need to find a way to be adaptable and flexible with the situation, and where possible, try to, coach and help people see the gap they're creating in the relationship. So for me, it's all about relationships. It's all about connectivity. And I too think that things have changed drastically over the last 10 years. And I do see a lot of hope for the future. The other thing I'll say is that one of the opportunities I've had over the last 10 years is to work globally. And I've worked in different cultures And
Oh,
have had the reaction. And there's a lot of growth there as well. Women in countries where men have been predominantly leaders are now finding their voice, where in the US, we were able to find our voice, 10, 15, 20 years ago, where now you're seeing women who are now starting to find their voice. And it's interesting. The dynamic is so interesting to just watch that. And it's incredible. It's incredible to see the growth worldwide. So I think there's a lot of hope.
That's awesome. And I'm going to come back to that global leadership. Let me, and this is for anyone who wants to answer, talk about your biggest success you see in leadership for yourself, and how did that come about? It was like,
yeah, when I think about looking back on my career of when I felt like I was most successful, it was typically when either I had overcome some big fear and really learned a ton through the process, or, conversely helped somebody else develop or do something they've never done and achieve something they couldn't imagine they could do. And so those ones for me personally are things like, I remember early in my time in consulting, I was asked after I was consultant for maybe 4 or 5 years to lead the company's most strategic, biggest account and be the account manager, which I'd never done. And I'm thinking, I'm not qualified. I've never even led a sale from start to finish. So I don't know, literally don't know how to do it. And so that was a big pivotal moment for me to say, okay, I'm going to take this leap of faith and something that I don't know if I can do, and I'm scared, and to just give it a try and learn along the way. And I think one of the keys to anything like that is really asking for support. And so for me, I asked my boss to meet with me basically every day for a year. I would call him at the end of the day, debrief on here's what happened, here's something I'm not sure about, here's how I think I'm going to approach this. And that's what I needed to really get through that learning curve. And so I would just encourage, that's something that I've tried to continue to do throughout my careers. When I see something that's scary or I'm afraid, that's sometimes a sign like, ooh, that's something I need to do, because that's an opportunity for me to learn and grow. And those are the times when I look back and think, wow, I'm really proud that I overcame that or was able to.
okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I was just gonna say, I think the big pause though, Christine, is that, success, wow, it's such a loaded word, right? I think we're still evolving when we think about our successes. For me, I take them in small bite-sized pieces. I think every time we're able to break barriers or remove barriers by having a seat at the table, and I think someone else had in a male-dominated environment or space, anytime I think it comes through when you've built some really great relationships and connections where you're able to make change. Those are some of the successes that I have seen within my career. And most familiar to me is in the military, where people, or some leaders me being only female and being in a male dominated organization, they tell you, well, you can't, or you use in that, in your vocabulary where you can't, and they don't see you doing anything that matches up quite nicely how they would do it. And then when I come along and then now you're looking for my feedback and my input, that looks like success for me, when I've been able to have and communicate with others that are not like me in the room.
Very good. Nice. Anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to echo Chrissy sort of got my thought process thinking. And so I was just recently promoted at JLL, and because of a series of transitions in people above me, I've had like 3 managers, and I've only been there 6 months. And so it's been a little crazy since I've been there. but I've been promoted into this senior associate position, and I'm really being entrusted to be able to take the learning and development program and to take it to where I see it could go. And that's both terrifying and really exciting all at the same time, right? Like, can I do this? Like, do I really have the skills and background to really own the learning and development program? And then I'm like, you know what? They're giving it to you, so you should just go with it and trust that you can, what you don't know, you'll figure it out. So, you know, I would say that right now I'm sort of living and leaning into that in a way. Certainly the move into corporate America for me was a big win. So, you know, after a lot of years of really struggling and trying to find something full time. So I'm excited about where I am right now and what that might mean for me down the line. So
Nice.
but I want to echo that being scared thing is an opportunity.
Wow, and congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
Nice job. Anybody else?
Well, I'll share from my perspective. I think when it really hit me the first time was when someone who worked for me came back and told me that if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't have had the strength. And you ladies may know her, Vicky Matero.
Yeah, I do know Vicky.
She came back to me, right, Shantae? I know you know. She came back to me several years ago, and she told me, "You inspired me, and because of you, I had strength." And I literally cried because I was so moved. Now, people had said that before, right? But the way she said it, I knew at that moment that nobody could take that away from me, right? And to me, that was success. So I just try to, you know, I have a saying that I will give my energy to whoever I feel is worthy of my energy. And if they're not worthy of my energy, I'm not going to waste it, because there are people who are worthy of it. And so when I feel the most successful is when somebody wants my energy, right? And somebody asks and seeks it. So for me, that's how I feel I find my success.
Okay, very good. Melanie, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, mine is a little bit different because it's not work that I'm actually being paid for, but paid for in a different way, I should say. And that is some of the work that I'm currently doing with the National Breast Cancer Coalition. I've had the opportunity to sit on panels with research scientists where we are evaluating grant proposals for research dollars that hopefully will lead to a breakthrough in finding an end to people dying from breast cancer. And the very first time I was recommended to participate on a panel, I too was very afraid, even though I had completed a science class that was intense to get me to the point where I would be able to sit, you know, side by side with these scientists. I was still a little bit afraid. And I will tell you that the biggest feeling of accomplishment coming away from sitting around a table, 17 scientists and 3 advocates like myself, actually evaluating one-on-one, having the same voting rights as to what we think works or doesn't work with a proposal that is a part of the Department of Defense Breast Cancer Research Program. Huge, huge, made a big difference, left me feeling there is nothing that I can't do if I put my mind to it. And if I tamp down that fear that always raises its ugly head. So, you know, when you look at leadership, you're saying, could I be a leader in a room with scientists? These people went to school to do this, but yet they have to have patient advocates as a part of that process. And that our input makes a big difference, a huge impact.
That's a good point. And I think I kind of heard this a few times as you ladies were speaking, is that fear factor. And I always say, and I've had it myself, like, where does that come from? Is it that we express it more, or there is a fear that we're not going to measure up, especially when we're in a room with a a lot of in a male-dominated room, or we see people who are like, I was in the room and I called them big brains because I'm like, everybody's here smarter than me. But it was like, where does that come from? Like, where does it come from, and how do we navigate our way through it?
Yeah, I think it comes from us thinking about like we're probably reading into too much of what others think about us, right? Or how we're being perceived. And usually 9 times out of 10 that, it's probably not the case, but most of the time it's not the case. But I do think that fear factor comes in that because we're in such a relational, building relationship type of environment, collaborative type of environment, and someone is always looking up and looking either up to you or looking for a way to assess you and your talent and where you are today. So that's what I'm thinking that's where it's from. I would love to hear some of the other ladies' thoughts on it too.
I think it's self-imposed in a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's self-imposed, oftentimes without evidence. And we press forward with whatever that voice is that's going on or has been going on in our own heads, as opposed to looking at what is on paper for us. Like, you didn't just pop up and spring out of nowhere. You have a career that you built, you have successes, you have accomplishments. And I think that depending on your profession, they don't always, it's kind of different. Kind of like in the military, you do have the stripes and the whatnot that lets you know your ranking and so forth. You don't necessarily have that in the professional environment. And I think for women in particular, we often play down those accomplishments. So whatever fears do exist, they get to be amplified because they're in our own head, which is not where they should be, right? And in addition, they allow us to focus on those rather than the accomplishments.
Good stuff. Any other thoughts on that? You just have to evolve and grow, right? So let me flip that over to what was the hardest thing or the biggest challenge that you experienced as you moved up into leadership? I want to start with Miss Giovanna.
That's a good question. I did think about that one earlier too. I think for me, it was kind of finding my way in terms of, who I wanted to be as a leader, who I wanted to be as a manager, right? Like, what did I want, how did I want people to see me as someone leading? And I think it also gets back to this fear factor because, right when you said that, I had written down fear here and I put exclamation marks because I heard so much fear also. But for me, I wasn't afraid. I was just in uncharted territory and I didn't know what to expect. And I didn't know how I wanted to move forward. So I had to really step back and look at the people that were around me and the different values and styles. And I had to create my own style. And I think for me, that was the biggest challenge was what style did I want to portray and did I want to own? But crafting that style and mastering that style has been something that never stops, right? You have to continue to evolve your style as you learn and as you work with new people. So for me, I think that was the biggest challenge is who did I want to be? And really on that, I didn't want to be inconsistent and I didn't want to be inauthentic, right? I wanted to be someone that people would be inspired to work for. And I didn't want to be the smartest person in the room. I learned that quickly. Being the smartest person in the room is not getting you anywhere. I'd rather be surrounded by so many more smarter people. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
Anybody else?
As I thought about this question, for me, it was more around finding my voice and being my authentic self. When I think about finding my voice, I think about being in the room with all the other leaders. And I think, Marilyn, you said it before, you know, when you have that seat at the table, you're there for a reason, right? You didn't get there by chance. But then it's, the biggest challenge earlier in my career is not speaking up and having that voice where I would hear other people say the same thing that I had in my head. And then quickly I evolved into, you know, growing into having that courage to do so. But when I think about being my authentic self, that even has evolved over time, because there was once upon a time where you were perceived a certain way. There are a lot of stereotypes out there, especially from a woman's standpoint, in the way you speak, in the way you wear your hair and things of that nature. Like, you know, like you said, it's self-imposed. I had these things in my head, like I'm a little country sometimes when I talk. So I had this notion like, wow, I need to communicate like someone else. I need to practice like that person and how they speak, instead of just being me and true to myself, and like, you know, growing through that.
Nice. I love that.
I have to just say something really quick about that. So I just want to share a story really quick. So you can see I have curly hair. And when I was 25-ish, I was working for a gentleman who was probably...
Did she freeze? Oh no. Oh, we lost her. Darn. All right, hopefully she'll pop back on. Y'all can hear me?
They can hear you.
Okay.
Well, I can.
All right. I guess we lost her. Hopefully she'll pop back on.
And
Oh, there she is.
oh, did I lose you guys?
Yeah.
Yes, just for a little bit.
Oh, well, anyway, long story short, I wore my hair curly today intentionally because this gentleman told me that I shouldn't wear my hair curly because it was unprofessional. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So that was a very eye-opening moment for me when, you know, I had to step back and look and say, I can't even wear my hair the way it's naturally supposed to be. I have to spend an hour straightening it every day, right? So anyway, I thought I had to.
We can have a whole session on that.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that's good. Like, yeah, yeah. You know, woosah. So let's talk about pivoting. So a lot of you ladies have come from one career you probably did for years, and then we pivoted. Like, I know Chrissy was in the IT industry. Now you're an entrepreneur, a business owner. Shante, you've pivoted out of military into corporate, if you will. Same thing with you, Margaret. So talk to me about what was the thing that said, I need to make this change from a leadership perspective, and how difficult was it for you to do so? So I'm going to pitch that one to Chrissy first.
Yes, I'm very much in the middle of the pivot right now, so it's a good question for me. Yeah, around the end or 2020 is when I started to realize, and I do think COVID contributed to it. I started to realize that I wasn't learning and growing at the rate that I wanted to. I felt a little stagnant. I've been at the same company 16 years, and over the years I had been able to take on new responsibilities every couple of years, but I was sort of at the end of the road with that. And it did help that I was physically separated from the people, because I love all the people that I work with. And so if I had been in the office every day, it would have just been harder to imagine living without all those people and being part of that team. So I did become part of the Great Resignation before I even knew it was cool in 2020, and decided it just really felt like the right time to challenge myself to do something different. It was very emotional and scary saying goodbye to the people and the stability of, you know, a place where I had grown up professionally and you know, everything that goes with that. I think I had to get kind of detox from some of the feedback you get that you kind of get addicted to, almost like, you know, working as part of a team, people respecting you in a position, leadership, and a lot of the things that, and, you know, having a stable salary and things like that, that I, you know, created a lot of stability. And so that part has been scary to go out on my own and try to do this thing. It's also scary to do it on your own and feel like I'm putting this idea and this intention out into the world, and it's not like me and my team or like it's just me putting myself out there and saying, you know, this is something I want to feel strongly about, I want to make an impact on. And that has taken a lot of constant kind of ups and downs of feeling like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? And so I'm trying to really just embrace taking it, you know, week by week and figuring out, like, let's do the next right thing and see, kind of like trusting the universe, like I'm looking for signs, like, okay, I feel like I'm on the right path, so I'm gonna keep going down that path, and listen to signs kind of where I need to adjust. And I have gotten a lot of good feedback from people over the past year and have changed some of the way that I'm positioning my services and things like that. So I'm trying to stay open and figure out where this path is leading, but it's been a definite growth opportunity for me, and exciting new chapter.
Very good.
I'll go next if you want me to.
Mm-hmm.
It was less about pivoting for me and more about balance. I've always had my foot in the corporate space and in the military, because I was in the Illinois Army National Guard, which is what they call a weekend warrior. So it's always doing 100 million things at one time, whether I was in the military, being a single parent, in school, and, you know, and had a full-time job as well. So I've always done a little bit of something. But I think that pivotal change for me was thinking like that thought of being a jack of all trades and a master of none. I was still feeling unfulfilled in something. And it was beginning to be both careers, and all things were becoming to be so demanding. I had to take a step back and reflect on, okay, well, what does Shantae really want to do, right? And that's challenging when you're good in multiple spaces, and you're passionate about multiple things. I felt like leaving the military, I was leaving my team behind. I mean, I had I managed a group of 20 to 30 young women and men in the military, leading them and helping them become leaders as well. That was very hard. It was very emotional, especially coming from a space in where I grew up in, and they became my family as well. But one thing really, really stood out to me, and I think Giovanna, you will probably be able to relate to this, is, you know, I still had my mind made up to leave the military, but they were still trying to reel me back in to stay. But the one thing this sergeant said, you know, you as a leader, people, we really would like you to stay, is what he said. And he said, and it's because people come to work for me because they have to. People come to work with you because they want to.
Nice.
And that even made me more emotional, like I shouldn't stay. But that was my pivotal moment, like, okay, then that made me feel really good that I've done my part. I've done what I need to do as a leader. I've groomed them. They can go on and be bigger, better individuals. Now it's time for someone else to lead the reins and me to go on and do something a little bit different.
Nice, pretty powerful. All right. Margaret, I know you made a major pivot.
I did make a major pivot. I think that, like CHRISSY, I had reached the point where I had reached the end of where I could go with what I had been doing, and was also frustrated with what I had been doing. Like I was ready to make a change. And I think the question then became that question of who am I and who do I want to be? And oh, sorry, let me turn that off. And I had to figure that out. I had to figure out who I was and what I really wanted and what was really important to me. And one of them was, I mean, I was driven to a certain degree by the desire for financial independence. And, you know, I couldn't find that in the fields that I was looking in, and could find that in corporate America. And so, you know, while it wasn't fully my intention to land in corporate America, I would have stayed in higher ed, you know, had there been more opportunity. But I think, you know, I think I was ready to take on a new challenge and take on a new identity and have, not take on a new identity, but take on a different role and take my skills that I had learned other places and apply them in a new place, and feel like I was being compensated in a way that made sense for the work that I was doing and for the skills that I bring. And that has made a big difference. That has made a big, it has had a huge impact on me. But to do it took a lot of slogging through a few years where I was really like underemployed and really, you know, because I had to go back to school and take on that and make that decision to take on doing a master's of adult education, which will hopefully graduate in May, all things willing. I will finish and have my master's of adult education. So I'm excited about that. And that was kind of a leap of faith. Do I really need to go back to school and take on the debt and the things that I knew would come with that, doing that, and sort of taking that risk, but also feeling like I was also pushed to that, like life sort of put me in a place where it was like, well, you got to do something different. Something has to change. So, okay, here we go. We're going to just take a leap of faith and see where it takes me. So, and here I am, and I'm really happy with where I am and what the possibilities are down the line. But it wasn't easy, but I do think it's about finding that authentic, true self and really letting that live. So I had to distill what that was. And for me, that at the end of the day, what I do is I teach and I help people learn and develop. And, you know, it doesn't matter where I am doing that. I love to do it. So I get this opportunity to do it in this completely new place that I get to learn and grow and stretch, because I'm learning a whole new environment, which is an exciting thing for me. I also had to sort of move away from sort of a new understanding of what it meant to have a calling, or what my vocation, for lack of a better word, was, and how I could live that out. And I struggled with that for a long time, about what that meant and what that meant in terms of my values and my ethics and so forth. And I'm grateful to be working for a company that values ethics and that values being known for being an ethical company. So, you know, it's not perfect. It's not, they are not, you know, they're not going to solve world peace and world hunger all in one fell swoop, but they have a great mission, and I'm really proud to be part of them. So that's really exciting. So.
Really cool. Congratulations on your degree.
Thank
We're
you.
already speaking it. It's happening.
It'll happen one way or another.
Right. Got a lot of great things going on.
Marylynn or Giovanna, do you guys want to chime in on this one?
I mean, I think everything has been said for the most part. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, good. All right, so let's talk about a few things we talked about was the COVID impact. So how do you guys think that has changed how we lead today? A lot of things have COVID has done a few things. It has brought things to light. It has suppressed some things. It has impacted a lot of our emotional and mental health. So being leaders in your industries, talk to me about how you shifted, or how has COVID, or if you shifted, how has COVID changed how you lead? Excuse me. I'm going to go with Marilyn on that first.
I think for me, and you know me well, to be a very hands-on, face-to-face kind of person, that's certainly my preference. But I've known for a lot of years, as many of us have, that we can still get business done. We can still get it done. We don't have to physically be in the same space to do it. So I was one of those going, doggone it, they're finally figuring it out. You know, that was kind of my attitude, because I felt it was disingenuous for a lot of execs to make people feel like they physically needed to be in an office in order for the exec to feel good. That didn't make sense to me. It never has made sense to me. And so I was cheering for the remoteness, if you will. Now, with that said, I recognize that a lot of certain industries and certain companies probably did have some challenges because of the way in which they did conduct business. A lot of what I've done, a lot of the conferences that I normally would attend, we did them virtually. A lot of the meetings that I would normally have in person, I couldn't do. I couldn't go to Capitol Hill and call on our legislators as I normally would. We did those meetings virtually. It ended up allowing us to have more people to participate, more Virginia folks to participate in a meeting with a specific legislator, but there is still something missing, in my opinion, about the legislators not knowing that I'm going to pop in whenever I want to pop in, right? That's still a card in my back pocket that I think those of us who do advocacy, we still need, and we cannot do that for obvious reasons. Don't know when we're going to be able to do that kind of thing again. Relative to conferences, places where you go to learn, and you know, I invite other young advocates to participate so that they can learn. We've had to do them virtually, and frankly, people don't like sitting in front of their computers learning, sadly. To me, I thought it was going to be laborious the first time I did it. It absolutely was not. It was exactly the opposite. For some strange reason, I felt like I was concentrating more because I didn't have I'm cold in the room, I got to go to the bathroom, or, you know, any of those things. So for me, it was it heightened my concentration, but for a lot of people, it did cause them to not want to participate. As far as leaders are concerned, I think everybody learned a lesson. We learned that we can get business done. We can get business done. You do not have to mandate that every single employee sit at a desk to get their work done. And the respect you give them of being able to be remote when they need to be remote, I think adds a lot to what these employees can contribute to your company overall.
Okay, very good. Anybody else?
Well, I think Marilyn just like knocked it out of the park with everything. The only thing that I would add to what you said, Marilyn, is that, you know, I think not only execs, but leaders figured out that, you know, their employees were being more productive with getting things done, right?
Yes.
Where an employee would spend 2 to 3 hours in the car, they could utilize that time to get that work done. Part of some of the challenges that I see now today with working remote and leading remotely is that, the enormous amount of time your employees are on the camera, right? They get camera fatigue, or you see a lot of people multitasking and not really being engaged and paying attention to the cause or the call. And, you know, you have a lot more meetings on the calendar than you've ever had because, you know, everything shifted to being virtual versus being in person. So those are some things that I'll call out, seeing some little bit differences or similarities in leading virtually and working and leading through COVID.
Okay. Anybody else?
I want to echo that. I think everything's been said, but the one thing I would add is that I think networking is more difficult in the COVID era.
Yeah.
It's more difficult to make those connections. You don't have just being known around the office or that sort of thing. And it's really weird when your position is remote regardless of COVID, like which is my position. So, I won't ever have my team exists in Minneapolis, Kentucky. I think there's 2 of them in Kentucky and I'm in Richmond. So, it's not like we're going to have a face-to-face meeting or go out to lunch or, do those things that are the networking pieces that often happen. So I think networking has become more of a challenge in the COVID era.
The Derby's coming up. You could always go to Kentucky for the Derby.
That is good. Yep. So as we have evolved, and there's still so much, let's talk about our worth in leadership, the financial worth of it all, and our thoughts on the pay gap that we know there is. And does that change how we move, move about the cabin in a sense, when we are working with people, being either a business owner or business leader, and you are aware that there's a pay gap for the same work? So what do y'all think?
So ready to talk about this. Yeah, that's one of the most challenging times in my career, when I realized basically I got access to some data in a new leadership role I was in that showed me that I was not being paid as much as one of my peers. And my goals were literally twice as much, like in terms of revenue targets, everything measurable. My goals were much higher and I was getting paid less. And so it was a big wake-up call for me. Broke a lot of trust with my manager and people that I thought had my back, because I just assumed all along that it was fair and equitable. And what I realized is that a lot of people will advocate for themselves very vocally and proactively, and I just never did that. Every time I was offered a new opportunity, like that time I became an account manager, I didn't even mention how much is this, how is this going to influence my compensation? It didn't even enter my mind. And, things at the end of the year, they would make adjustments like, oh, you've been doing this role, and so here, we're going to give you more. And it felt like, okay, they're looking out for me. And meanwhile, my peer was, anytime there would be more responsibility, he would say, I don't know if I want to do that. How much are you going to pay me? And so it was a big wake-up call for me that I was not advocating for myself in the way that other people were. And it just is not something that comes naturally to me. So I have to be aware that. And then, it translates to, as I price contracts now, just trying not to undervalue myself. And so it's very much present to me now. And that's something that I love to tell that story, especially to women younger in their career, like you have to bring that up regularly. And it doesn't have to be weird. You can say it in a very tactful way, like how will this influence my compensation, But I think that's what I did wrong, was just assume that things were fair and not stand up for myself and advocate for myself. So that's what I took away from that.
Very good. Anybody else?
I have a couple of young nieces. I say young, they're in their 30s, and that's young technically for me. but they don't have this issue. I don't know what gene they have that I don't have, but they don't have this issue around money. They don't have one single issue about asking for more money or advocating for themselves. And I haven't yet had a discussion because these are nieces, these are my best friend's children who are my nieces, and they don't know each other. The nieces don't. But I've had several different conversations with them, and they're just, boom, I want to do this, and this is what I think I should earn. It's a beautiful thing to see, because many of my contemporaries, we just did not have that gene.
Mhm. I would agree with you, Marilyn. I think my son is in that generation as well. It's like they just have this switch in their head, like, look, no, that this is not what I want to do. This is what I'm going for, and I'm staying on this path, no matter what. I think it is more generational in terms of how we were raised and
Yes.
how we grew up.
Yes.
And you know, back then everything was more like, you know, you stayed at a job 10 and 20 years, you let it play out, you know, you wait until you retire. Now in this new generation, no, I'm not waiting. No, I'm the prize. If they don't give me what I need, I'm leaving.
And here's what's odd for me. I have a good friend whose son got a job with IBM. I spent 15 years with IBM. So when she told me he was going to be working for them, she was excited. I was excited. He got the job, I want to say a year and a half ago. I'm going to go out on a limb and say 2 years. I don't think it's been 2, but let's say it's been 2. He's actually ready to look for someplace else. And I'm thinking, excuse me? What is happening?
See, but that's because job hopping was not a thing. Now
Correct.
it is a thing, right?
But I'm thinking job hopping from IBM to where, right? And again, that's in my head because I'm indoctrinated with IBM was the pinnacle of jobs, so of companies to work for. But so yeah, there's a big difference generationally, and in some cases, it's a good thing. Yeah,
it is. I do agree.
All right. Anyone else?
I would just say, I think we're more aware of the pay gap. Like, I think people are like, I think Lean In and other organizations have really brought attention to it. And while there may have been suspicions about it previously, now it's just an accepted fact. There's a pay gap, and people know that it needs to be addressed. You know, whether or not they are addressing it is another question, but they at least know that there is a problem. They can't deny that there's a problem in the same way that I think they could earlier, because now the data is there to show that women are paid less, women of color are paid less than white women, you know, and how all that works together to keep certain systems in place. So
and I've seen a lot of increase in transparency, companies who are publishing data on it, and at least internally, and some that are even publishing their compensation data externally, which I think is a great step in the right direction, because anytime you have transparency, it's easier to break down those systems that are in place.
Right, that's right, Chrissy. I think that I think the same. I think companies are keeping more of a line of sight to it and paying attention to it, and actually managing and monitoring it a little bit better, so that they don't get those same lawsuits about pay equity and pay gaps.
Yep.
Because I mean, it happens over time. They get so many that they can't afford to continue to run their business. So it's almost like, okay, well, what do we do our due diligence from a compliance standpoint to make sure that all of our folks are equitably paid across the board?
Yep. Very good. Giovanna, you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, so I think, Chrissy, you said it right. It's so I've had the same experience with my colleagues who are men who have said, you just need to ask for more money. They'll give it to you if you ask. And the thing is, to your same point, like, I never thought, why would I ask, right? Like, I'm assuming I'm being paid fair for the work I'm doing. But at the same time, men just don't have a problem asking. They've historically asked. The thing is, I didn't know you could ask, right?
Mhm.
It was when this just literally happened to me like 6 months ago. And one of my colleagues said, you know, you're at the top of your game right now. Like, you could get anything you want. Literally, you should go and ask for a raise. I said, I'm going to go, like, we're right around the corner for incentive or for, you know, year-end bonus. And he said, no, you should ask, because if you leave right now, they would be in turmoil, right? He says, this is a time when you're supposed to ask. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, he told me he just asked and he got an increase. And it was like April. It wasn't part of a merit increase. It wasn't part of a mid-year increase, nothing. And I said, is this, so I said to him, is this common, right? Do other people do this? He said, yes, I know so many people who do this. I said, do you know other women that do this?
Yeah. I think for me, do we think the fear of asking for more, do we think that it's in fear of them taking something away from us?
Yeah, I don't know, right?
Good question.
So needless to say, I didn't ask. I can tell you.
You didn't ask.
I didn't ask, but when we just had annual performance, and I did say something to my boss after he told me that he was putting me in for a promotion. So I did say something after that. We'll see. We'll see what happens with the promotion.
Really interesting. It sort of feels like we need a training camp or something about how to do that for women, because we do feel so insecure around that.
Right.
It's unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah.
Christine, I still have this book that look, it has your name right here. Look.
Oh my God, that thing is old.
It is so old. But I'm like, Christine is really good at this. So we might have to get some training from Christine.
I think it's a new class for you, Christine. I think it's a new service you can offer.
You're like, getting to yes. Yeah, I do advocate, and I do talk to women a lot about how you position yourself for those conversations and why we shouldn't be afraid, because I learned it pretty much like Chrissy, looking at something that was on a copier machine, and I was like, wait a minute. And as opposed to going in there a certain way, I had to be very strategic in how I went in there to request it. And I at some point it was I kind of put it on the line. Either this is going to happen or I'm going to walk. That's kind of the way I went with it, because I was just up here with it. And I kind of spent myself out of control thinking about it, like all these years, and So I did learn strategically how to go in there and ask for my worth. And as a business owner, I have taken more classes. I have done more things, done more exercises on knowing my worth and my value and how to price myself right, so that people will know that. And sometimes if that means they don't get the contract, then they don't get the contract. Because what I wasn't willing to do was negotiate my worth. And I think that's a lesson women, especially our younger women, bringing them up, like, understand your worth and don't worry about outpricing yourself. Because if you feel good about what you're doing, they're going to get what they pay for, right?
Right.
I just still have that book. That's funny. All right, so let's think about this in leadership. I think we can maybe we won't, but we could say that we consider ourselves to be really good, strong, authentic leaders. Talk about a time when you had a bad leader or you were under bad leadership, and how did that mold you as a leader?
Oh, well, that's a good one. I had a plenty of bad leaders. Okay. I had a bad leader. Okay. This particular leader was really a micromanager. and my thought process with all of the experience that I brought to the table, I just felt like it was not of value to him because he wanted to manage not only me, but the work a certain way based on how he felt it should be run. So he had a self agenda, if you will. So I noticed that, you know, in our one-on-ones, you know, we would talk about work and, you know, we would just have a lot of work to do. So I thought in my mind, okay, well, let me bring the list of work that's happening and let's prioritize it based on what needs to get done. No, it needs to all get done, always done. And and what meetings do you, and if I'm in a meeting and he wanted to meet at the same time, and then he's like, well, where were you? I was in this meeting that you said was priority. Well, no, well, you need to be in that meeting too. I said, so what do you suggest I do? He said, you need to do it all. Okay, so this was impacting me physically, mentally, emotionally, you know, so I had to think to myself, okay, Shante, you're gonna have to build up some type of courage, managerial courage. The first thing I did, instead of having a conversation with him, I said, well, let me meet with some other folks. Maybe it's me, maybe I need to, you know, develop some other muscle. Let me talk to some people that have worked with him before to see how I can better work with him. Not telling on him, but trying to understand the way in which he operates so I can kind of understand that. Okay, that didn't work, that went left. And then, so I got to the point where I said, okay, it's time for the conversation. It's time, because as you're asking, as we're having a dialogue and you're saying you're open to feedback, it goes both ways. Feedback goes both ways. So you're giving me feedback, I'm taking it all in, I'm managing to those expectations that you have. And I said, okay, now, do you have a moment? Can I give you a little bit of feedback from a leadership perspective? I gave my feedback and he instantly got defensive, got rude, got mad. And then he turned around and apologized all in the same breath. I was sitting in the chair and I took a step back and I go, you know, and I just said, Shante, just wait for it. Just sit back and listen. Don't respond or react, just listen. You put it out there, you gave the feedback that you need to give, listen. So he just went through this whole cycle and apologized. And then I felt like, okay, here it is right here, here it is. So I felt like at that point I said, okay, you need to play chess and not checkers now. I went out and took ownership of my career and found another opportunity, and where I didn't even have to apply for. I had a conversation with another leader that had an opening on their team, similar work, just a different leader. And the leader came to him, and the next thing I know, I turned a really not so good situation into a positive situation. I didn't make it about him. I made it all about me, all about me. And that right there was managerial courage right there.
I like that, managerial courage. I love that. You. Nice job. Anybody else? While you all are thinking, I'll share one. Because I know there was others out there. There has to be. I worked for it was a female, and I guess it bothers me sometimes when I work with females that are like this. But I picked up very early that there was some emotional intelligence and some insecurities in this person. And I watched her as she was grooming other leaders. And she would say these this is how, and she literally, as she's standing in front of me talking to this new person who just came to the company in this leadership role, really excited, but it was a guy, he was actually challenged with, he had a hard time having hard conversations with people. So she stood there and she said, let me explain to you how you get people under control. You treat them like you would a dog. Sometimes you have to step on their neck.
What?
Yes. And I was like, I immediately got really hot. And I was like, what? I couldn't get the words to say in the moment. I got up and I walked out of the room. because I didn't know my response. I didn't know how to control my emotions in that moment because I was watching this person sit there and say this, and I was like, what? So after I gathered myself together, I had to like bring her and her boss together and say, here's what I witnessed. And not only was it embarrassing, it was offensive to the person who she was talking to, and he didn't even know how to receive it. He kind of stunned. He was stunned, and we're like, what? And I said, this is not acceptable. This is just not acceptable. This mindset, this isn't acceptable. I can't work under this type of leadership. And she was actually my boss, so I was like, what's happening right now? So it was, did it change? Did she change? No. Was she held accountable? Absolutely not. It was the culture. That was acceptable for her to feel comfortable enough to say that in an open forum, and that was okay. So this culture was causing, well, I don't know if it was causing the behavior, but it was kind of allowing the behavior. So she felt emboldened to do so. What that taught me as a leader is, number one, I always look for people to see. I'm very observant, and I watch leaders move, how they move. It taught me what leader I didn't want to be, and to be very aware of my emotional intelligence when I'm talking to people, so that I won't project that on somebody else. Because this is what it boils down to. It was more about her insecurities, her inability to control the situation. So it's very forceful, like, treat them like, I was like, wow. So that's how I got out. That's what I don't want to do. I don't ever want anyone to feel the way I felt or the person she was talking to felt. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Both of those stories, Christine and Shantae, show a lot of courage for you to speak up. And that was kind of one, it made me think of a story where my leader was basically, I was kind of on his good list. So he treated me well. But other people, I noticed certain behaviors, like if they, didn't have a certain skill set or didn't come prepared for meetings, he would sort of belittle them and really put them on the spot, make them feel really uncomfortable. And for a while, I would observe this behavior in different situations. And I have to sadly admit that for a while, I never spoke up. And I wish, going back, that's one of the professional regrets I had, that I did speak up sooner. But I knew, it didn't seem right. But, he's my boss, and you don't want to rock the boat. But at some point along that journey, I did finally speak up and have the courage to say, this behavior is unacceptable. Like, I will not be a party to this behavior. I will not be in meetings where you treat people like this. I will not, be a part of this by not saying anything anymore. And I have to say, in this case, he did end up having a coach and really changed his behavior over time. So that was a positive thing. But it took me a while, I think, to have the courage and leadership to stand up to that behavior.
Good for you.
You all are inspiring with your courage.
Yeah, I can't say that mine is that I stood up, but certainly becoming aware. I think, Christine, you so hit it on the head when it's the culture. When it's the culture of a place that allows a behavior to go on. And the leader that I had, I think gave a lot of lip service to female empowerment and female leadership. And then really in many ways just wasn't interested in transformative leadership, like really was interested in just behaving, having the same right to be oppressive as men have been, like, I'm like, that's kind of not the point, like we're kind of missing the point here. And I was working for a social change organization. So, that's kind of a problematic thing. But I think that when I look at it, I look at cultures that there's the individual, but then there's also the culture that of what the culture will allow that individual to do or not do. And a culture can really shape whether that person, how much weight that person has to be able to behave in ways that are not acceptable. And you know, there's always a few probably bad apples in any organization, particularly the larger that you're in, but a good culture, I think, can make a big difference in how that's mitigated or not. I think of the movie The Smartest Guys in the Room, you know, about Enron. And, you know, that's such a great example of culture shaping behavior, you know, like the culture and the culture of the leadership, how they shaped the behavior of people all the way down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to that whole saying, people don't leave companies because of company, they leave because of their bad managers. Especially that culture. I think that culture aspect of it or perspective is key, because you start to look at all of that and you start to think, is this what leadership looks like?
Yeah, right there. Or is it me? Am I the one that can't adapt? Yeah. Anyone else on the bad leadership?
Well, I have a story. Well, first, just in general, I like to look at all the leaders that I've had the opportunity to work for and look for things that I like about them, whether I like the whole thing or not. But there is one person in particular that he actually inspired me quite a bit until I got to know him on a more personal level. And I found out that he was racist. And he started to say things that I couldn't even believe he would say in front of me. And I was like, oh boy, this is like, he actually taught me, the one thing he taught me that sticks with me is recognizing skills in individuals and aligning work to their strength. So finding a strength and aligning work to the strength. He was a big advocate of that. And so I learned a lot of techniques from him on that. But then to come to find out from a personal perspective that he had these political beliefs and he was, you know, fully racist. I mean, he had no qualms about it. He talked about it in public settings with other people we worked with. And for probably a good month, I struggled with what in the world am I supposed to do about this? I can't even look at him the same. Like now I hate him, right? Like it just isn't an okay thing. Like all the respect I had for him is now just, it doesn't matter anymore, but I don't even want to work for him. So I had to go and I had to say something. Come to find out that I wasn't the only one who had been saying things. So he did get coaching, but that didn't last very long and he was gone within 60 days. So I'm glad that something happened to, you know, that the culture didn't prevent, that the culture was positive and it didn't allow that to continue. But it was a very difficult situation for me because it really hit me from like a personal morals and values standpoint. And it was either I had to not work for him or he needed to leave. Like I didn't know what to do. And it was a very conflicting situation for me. So that was the ultimate worst person that in terms of leadership I had to deal with. And, you know, the personal conflict, I think, is where you've got, for me, if I'm not on the same level with someone personally from a value standpoint,
Right.
I can't work for them. It's just not going to work for me. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Yep. All right. Very good. Anybody else? Everyone had a chance to speak on what they wanted to say? Good. All right, so what would you advise women, future female leaders? What would be your 2 pieces of advice?
Well,
No, you're
I'll go first. So I have a young daughter who is actually watching. Her name is Viola. She's here. And she's with a couple of her friends watching downstairs. Christine knows her as a very young girl. She used to come into the office with me quite a bit. And what I have told her and what I've told her friends, and I send them what I call, I can't even forget, I can't even, shoot, I can't remember what I call it. Anyway, we're on a group chat together. And I don't know if it's words of wisdom or it's some kind of saying I have, and all of a sudden it's escaping me. But whenever I find something that motivates me or encourages me or inspires me, I share with them. And one of the things I'm always telling my daughter is, don't be afraid, right? Like, it's okay if you don't know everything. It's okay if you're not the smartest person in the room. She wants to always be the smartest person in the room. We're very different, and totally very different in terms of our backgrounds and our education and these kind of things. But I always tell her, don't be afraid to be who you are. Leverage your natural skills. If you're using your natural capabilities, your, born talents, right? These things that are innate to you, you're going to be happy. Don't put those things in the back corner, right? Like, embrace those things, celebrate them. Because as long as you're doing something that fulfills you and that you get to capitalize on your core skill set, you'll always be happy. And do work for a place. So that's kind of the one message, right? Like, about personal feelings and leveraging your core talent. But the other thing that I've shared with her is find something you're passionate about and leverage that, right? So she just went through, I think, Marilyn, you shared a story about your young nieces. My daughter's just out of, she's 25. So she's just had her first job, a year in her first job. And, she took the job and it was with a very good company, big name. But it was her first job, her first actual job besides waitressing in college. She never actually worked anywhere. She didn't do internships. So she took this job and she just kept saying, I just don't like the topic. It was for an insurance company. I don't like it. It's boring. I'm not interested in this at all. Like, and I'm not happy, right? Like, she liked the work she was doing. She was actually participating in a lot of philanthropic work. And that motivated her. But the actual topic of the insurance was very boring. So I said, okay, you've got your year now. She just hit a year. I said, now go look around. And she's a big advocate of, health and fitness and yoga and these things. I said, well, maybe go work for a yoga company. You can do the same thing anywhere. So those are the 2 things I would say I would tell the youth is follow your passion and use your passion in your day-to-day work if you can, right? If your skills are transferable to any industry, then take advantage of that. Then also be authentic, be yourself, and leverage your natural core talents. Find them also, find your talent.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Well, that's great. That's really great.
No, that was absolutely perfect. I cannot improve on that. That was perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I think I would just say I have to echo the be authentic and be yourself and figure out who that is and continue to watch that will evolve. It's not a one and done. It's not like you find out who your authentic self is and that work is done. It's like, that's lifetime work. But the other is, don't discount the importance of financial security. I think I sacrificed that for a really long time in the quest for pursuing passion or vocation or whatever. And it's got to be the whole package, because you're a whole person. And so it's got to be the totality of your life. So when we think about that sense of doing things you love or calling, you know, that's got to include that you can support yourself, that you can be financially stable, that you have benefits, that you might be able to retire someday, you know, who knows, you know. I don't know whether, I think that might become a lost dream for many of us, but you know, hey, you know, I'll hold out some hope. But I think it took me a long time to learn that lesson. And I guess one piece that I would also add is, if there has been a negative voice in your head that has shaped or told you that you couldn't do something because you would be wasting your talent, or some kind of message, that negative message, get that out of your head. Like you gotta figure out how to get rid of it, because otherwise it will continue to bog you down until you deal with it. So deal with it earlier and sooner rather than later. So.
Yeah, Margaret, actually, I think that's so important. One of the things too that I learned as a young mother was I needed to pay attention. I really needed to pay attention, because I needed to be able to have enough courage and enough understanding to guide, you know, my daughter in the right direction, right? So when you talk about making sure you can financially support yourself, you know, what I guided her through all of high school and all of her education was, what is it that she likes to do? Right? Like, what is the thing she's so good at? Even when she was little, right? Like, what's the thing she likes to do? And finding that as a young child and building it through elementary school, through middle school, through high school, through college, is the thing that all parents need to understand, is help your children find that. So that way they can learn over time how to build up a confidence, and then also follow a passion that is connected to their core talent. And again, for me, that's what it was all about. My daughter, she likes math. She always liked math. And so I told her, study math. You can use math in anything. It doesn't matter what you do. You can do it anywhere. And so, to Margaret, to your point, that was the way that I guided her to make sure that she didn't have to financially be worried. Get a hard skill, right? Like, get a hard skill. You can have all of the soft skills you want, but you need a hard skill. If you don't have a hard skill and you don't have a specialized skill, there's nothing that's going to set you apart from anyone else, right? Like, you have to go into, you know, your future and your education at a young age. You've got to be thinking about, like, and I think for me, parents need to be thinking about this. And this is something I think unfortunately, we don't have in a lot of parents, at least that I've been exposed to. But I'll tell you how this all happened. She wanted to be in the FBI. And so I did some research with some colleagues around, you know, people that I know that were in the FBI or in part of that type of work in Washington and in Virginia. And I found out that 90% of the people who apply for the FBI study criminal justice. So I told her, why are you going to study criminal justice? You're just going to be like everybody else. So what is it they're looking for? They're looking for diversity. They're looking for language. They're looking for physical fitness. They're looking for problem solving, analytical skills. Like, break it down to that and then develop your skill. And if that's what you want, you know, you don't have to study criminal justice. That you learn. You can learn that on the job, right? What you need is a core skill set to get in. And that's how kind of I guided her in her direction. But I thought I'd share that, Margaret, because I think the financial aspect is so important. And unfortunately, sometimes women don't always think about that part of the equation. So anyway.
Thank you. That reminds me when with my daughter, I always say, do something that's going to help you be able to pay your own bills. And because I can't pay them, I can only pay them for so long. But she, she's working in a summer job, and she came home and she said to me, there's a lady who works there. She's in like 40, 45-ish. And she's like, Mom, they just treat her so bad. Like they overwork her. Like people just leave. She has to stay there to close. She has to do all this stuff. And she's like, sometimes when I think about quitting school, I think to myself, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't want it to work like that. I don't want to have to do it because I said, right? Be aware. I said, sometimes people have to put up with, and sometimes I see this more with women, we have to put up with more than we need to or want to because the lights have to stay on. And sometimes we think about how do you position yourself so that you're not that dependent on that you can, you say, be like, you know what, I don't have to be treated like this. I want to leave, that kind of thing. But when you're in a situation where you don't have that, or you haven't built it, or you haven't positioned yourself to be able to say, I'm not going to allow people to disrespect or treat me any kind of way, then sometimes you get stuck. So she was saying she was just feeling so sorry for this woman because she's like, Mom, they just talk to her any kind of way, and I'm just like, and she has to hold her tongue. She doesn't like it, but she has to be like, for the financial stability that she needs. So I always tell her, hey, now position yourself differently.
Christine, that reminds me of like some of the things that go on in an office environment, which haven't been as prominent during COVID, but I would always notice like the people that are emptying the dishwasher and the kitchen at work, or the women, and the people who are asked to order lunch or take notes. And that's something I would definitely encourage young women to be aware of those dynamics, and encourage distribution of those activities across the team. So if you notice someone's always getting asked to take notes, maybe suggest, let's rotate that responsibility around so that everybody's doing that, or, assign somebody each week who's the dishwasher person or something to break some of those habits, because I think they just naturally happen in a work setting and reinforce certain types of work for certain, between women and men.
That's a good point.
I have to say something about that. I have to. I'm so sorry. But I worked for this woman in London, and she told me, so they always had tea around 2 o'clock, right? And she told me one day, I had offered to go and get the tea. And she told me, don't ever offer again. Don't ever offer any man to get him anything to drink in an office environment. I said, never. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about the perception of that. Right. And so now I'm like, that was probably about, 8 years ago or so. But now I will never ask, oh, did you want a cup of coffee too? No, I won't even ask. But you're so right. That is something that we do need to make sure we tell them.
That's really interesting. I come from an era of that wouldn't even be a thought in my mind.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too.
It's because when I started working, there were so few women in leadership that's the last thing you'd want to do, is to be perceived as the female who's going to get a beverage for a man who is a colleague or boss or whatever. Very interesting, the difference in generations.
Yep. Very good. Anyone else?
So just to echo a lot of the things that you all have said, I had a few thoughts, and I just recently went through the course, and there were some key takeaways, and I'll share that with you all here today. But when I think about future women leaders, my advice would be grow where you're planted, meaning do your best, be your best self where you are, where you're planted. Be open to opportunities you haven't even considered. Not everything has to be a step up, right? Another nugget that I got was share your plans of where you want to be. You know, and that's within networking and conversations with folks. You just never know where that may take you, or what your next opportunity may be. And always be curious. Never stop developing yourself. Find a mentor or an advocate, or be a mentor to someone else. Ask for what you want and don't be afraid of no. I think we talked about a lot of that today. Don't be afraid to say no. I mean, don't be afraid of no. Ask for feedback from those you trust and embrace it. And last but not least, get out of your comfort zone.
That's good. That's good.
I love
Excellent.
that. I love the grow where you're planted. That was one that I had on my list in terms of, I think sometimes, you know, we can overthink finding the perfect role or like, what do I really want to do? And it's like, seize the moment, seize the opportunities you have in front of you to learn. I started in as a paralegal in a law firm because I wanted to go to law school and quickly realized that was not the right path for me. But I learned so much doing that about attention to detail and things like that. So I feel like you can always make a lot out of what you're doing and in terms of growth and that will lead you and serve you well in the future. Love that.
Absolutely.
I like that. Very good. So as you all are in these roles of leadership, sometimes, and it seems like for us, we have more stress. So what are ways that you would what stress management things do you all have in place to deal with the stress level that you have? And it seems the higher you go, the more stress it is. Talk about how you manage stress in leadership roles.
For me right now, what I do is I put time on my calendar in between the day. Wherever I have holes, I use that as focus time, mindfulness time. I go and take a walk during my lunch. And then maybe I'll try to exercise a couple times a week, but incorporating some time within my schedule is what I do to kind of help eliminate some of that stress.
Mine is exercise. I've gone through different periods throughout different areas of my career where I didn't, and it took its toll. I mean, I felt sluggish. I looked sluggish. It kind of went with the role that I had, you know? But now I prioritize big time with exercise. I'm a morning person by nature. And so my preference is get whatever it is I want to get done early in the day, and no one can get in my way. Nothing can block, 6:30 in the morning, because I've got nothing else that's competing with it usually. So it's getting the exercise done. And I do that when I travel as well. I make it a point to take some exercise clothes with, and I get to the gym in the hotel. I do whatever I can to make sure I get that exercise done first. And it has actually served me very, very well. And over COVID, everybody called it, the lockdown, I'm struggling and this and that. And I know a lot of people did. I actually thrived because I liked my time. I didn't have as many forces pulling on me saying, hey, come have a drink here, come have lunch here, come meet me for breakfast there. And I got to do some consistent exercise. And for me, that's walking, to be honest. Big part of that is just walking. I walked so much until I managed to enter the half marathon in November. I did 11.2 miles. I did it virtually, not a short pump, but I did it. Yeah, but I did it. Yeah, and so, but it felt good. It feels good to watch the sunrise, So that's the way that I manage stress, and it really has served me well.
I completely agree, Marilyn. have the similar experience where I exercise every day. I have to do it every day to keep me feeling good. And I developed that habit mostly during COVID. Before that, I was a little less consistent, but that helped me to just build that habit. And it made a huge difference for my stress level and just being outside too in nature helps me like find peace and clear my mind and help me make connections on problems I've been trying to solve. It seems like they kind of comes together during that time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna offer something a little bit different, but for me, it really is about prayer and spirituality. I'm Jewish. I really try to set aside Shabbat. So Friday night to Saturday, I don't do any work. I don't do any schoolwork. I try to stay off my phone. I'm not very good at that one, but you know, I do try to make sure that I'm really taking that break once a week and setting it aside. And the practice of morning and evening prayer. So that prayer first thing as I wake up and again, right before I go to sleep is really an important grounding and a reminder of my values and why I do what I do. So for me, prayer and spirituality are essential to that, and also community. So when I can, I really do try to get to synagogue and go to services. So.
Well, I have something different as well. I actually don't think I have stress. It's weird. I used to have stress, but since COVID, I don't have stress anymore. Wow. I don't know why. I mean, not at work. I actually don't really have stress in general. I get tired and I get mentally exhausted, but I'm not stressed, right? Like, so to me, I'm not constantly, to me, stress is like you're constantly worrying about something and you're like, you know, you don't know if you're going to get it done, or, you know, you're worried what people are going to think, or you're worried about what, you know, if you can do something. I don't have that. What I have is like, I get like mentally drained from thinking and talking so much. And then I'm tired. But I think exercise could help me there. And I have actually started to exercise a bit. But I've learned really early in my career how to shut off. And I'm very good at shutting off. I'm so good that I forget Monday morning what I said I was going to do Friday. So I have to literally write a note for myself on Friday afternoons. And one of my colleagues that works on my team, I always tell her, okay, you know, we have a meeting at 3:00 on Fridays. We write down, okay, what's going to go on Monday, because I'll literally forget what I committed to do. So I don't know. That's for me. I think being able to shut down and really disconnect has, I think, helped me to not feel stress, like, you know, in general. And good sleep is very important. I think good, because if you,
I agree.
To me, I think that's also part of the problem. If you don't sleep, you get stressed, right? Physically, like you can't function if you're not sleeping well. So I think sleeping is very important.
That's good. I think I'll piggyback off of what you said, the unplugging. And I always take this to, I am not, when I have a PhD, I'm not a doctor. And what I do is not, lives are not dependent on what I'm doing. So I always tell people, understand that so I work, you know, I do my business and I work at a college. So if something's happening over the weekend, it'll be there when I get there Monday. Like, I don't have to be plugged into the phone, my laptop, all the stuff because what I'm doing, it's not like saving lives. I'm not saving lives. I mean, some people may think it's a way of saving their life, but this is not life or death. Sometimes I'm like, this is school. And whatever's happening, the biggest thing that can happen is a teacher doesn't show up. So we'll have to deal with that. But I'm very mindful that when I leave on Friday, I'm done. and I will plug back in right before when I get in the car on Monday morning, because whatever has happened, it'll be there when I get there. So, and my I call it my drug of choice, but I'm I'm a Netflix-aholic. And I will just get lost into that. And because I'm not thinking about anything, I don't have anything I will sit there. I may give me something to veg out on. I do try to exercise, but I'm not as good at it as I like to be. But I will sit there and I will get caught up into a series. And that's like, I leave everything else for a while. And then I'm like, okay, I don't have any stress. I'm just in another world for a while. And then Monday, I started back over. So that's my only stress reliever right now is Netflix.
So funny, Chrissy. Pedro, I do the same thing with Hallmark. So
I like that.
he'll save them for me. My husband, he'll record them for me, and he'll be like, "Why do you watch this stuff?" It's like my daughter too. She'll be like, "Okay, they don't like each other. They're gonna fall in love. Then they're gonna get married, and you know it's gonna snow, and they're gonna kiss right before whatever." Like they know the whole story, right? Like both my husband and my daughter, and they're like, "Oh, we're not." They refuse to watch with me, but I tell them I don't have to actually think about anything. Like I literally don't care. Like it's so peaceful just watching Hallmark, right? It's mind numbing. Like I don't even have to think about what's going to happen. I don't want to get anxious watching some kind of action movie or you know, I don't even have the energy to want to do those things. Like I've just really decided during this whole COVID thing, like I like being in my house.
Yes.
I like being home. I don't need to go anywhere. I love interacting with people, but I want them to come to my house. So I'm all right. I'm fine. I'll just watch Hallmark movies.
That's me. Give me a good series. I'm good. Like I like being at home. So we're going to close out, but I'm going to ask this last question. How do you all, or what do you do to pay it forward in leadership?
I'll start first. I am a part of, you know, everybody's, I'm pretty sure, familiar with ERGs, employee resource groups. So I'm a part of the Black Organizational Leadership Development ERG at Discover. And the way I pay it forward right now is through philanthropic events, and myself and another chair, I'm a co-chair of a professional development committee where we have a cohort of employees that'll go through some professional development training, but they'll have access to leaders, executives across the enterprise, the company. So whether the executive is leading or facilitating a topic on, let's say, navigating change or managing up and across the organization, or we partner with our L&D community to have more classes on like imposter syndrome, or, you know, different topics. So we have a 9-month program. So I give back in that way by creating and helping develop a curriculum to help develop minorities throughout the organization.
All right, well, I'll share what I do. So I'm also part of the what they call a young professionals development program. So I'm one of the leads, co-chairs of the group in an ERG. I'm also a formal mentor to 2 young up and coming high potential resources. And then I also do I participate in the group that brings on interns. So, and then I usually take 1 intern to my team every cycle. So that's what I do at work. Prior to COVID, I also participated in giving back. I was living in Pittsburgh for a while, and I participated giving back to our, what we call grow with our community. And we would do a lot of things with the local youth in kind of the underprivileged areas. And then I also personally pay it forward a lot by doing the silliest things, but like I'll go through a drive-through and I'll pay for someone's coffee or someone's meal.
Nice, I do that too.
Yeah. I was at the dollar store a few months back and I bought a $100 gift card from the dollar store, and I told the cashier, please use this for the next 100 items, right? So whoever came, they got their items for free. I leave generous tips for people that I feel really deserve them. Like very generous. Like one time my bill was like $13 and I left a $100 tip for somebody. So I try to, where I can, afford to give a little extra here and there. I do that. For me, I hope that somebody else then does it again, that what I've done for somebody, then they've done for somebody else. That's what my hope is.
I like that Dollar Tree thing. That's a good. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm a mentor for women who participate in this very intense science class about breast cancer. It's in San Diego. It takes place annually. We haven't done one for the last 2 years, but I'm a mentor for usually about 8 to 10 women who participate in that class. As you know, Christine and Margaret, I do work with with career prospectors and JAM in terms of just overall helping people who are in the job search career development area. And then in terms of paying it forward, I think similar to Giovanni, I don't always have $100 I want to necessarily leave for the person behind me, but I do work on, paying for the person behind me. I haven't been to McDonald's in 100 years, but paying for someone behind me in the Starbucks line, things of that nature. But I do agree, it's important for us to pay it forward. And sometimes it could be as simple as making sure that you hold the door for somebody coming in, because you just don't know what someone's day is like and the kind of day they're having. And you don't have to be elderly for me to do that. Just so that it's important just to be kind. In a world that we're in right now that's so polarized and in a sad way, it's important just to be kind.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have to just quickly say the reason I gave the $100 was because I won it on a scratch-off ticket. So I had a little extra $100.
I got you.
Actually, my mom and I both won. We won $211 on a scratch-off ticket.
And so, either way.
So we split the money, and I gave mine at the dollar store.
Good for you.
Very cool. Chrissy.
Sure. I've been in an intense period of networking the past year, so that's top of mind for me, is just feeling very grateful for people giving their time to me and wanting to do the same for others. So I'm always open to meeting with anybody, basically. So to see if I can help, like if anybody's looking for a job or anything, and if you all ever know people who are, I'm always in the yes column for that, because I've personally benefited from a lot of people who've given me mentorship and advice along the way and introduced me to people, which is such an important piece of, getting opportunities. And so definitely want to always be saying yes to any of those opportunities to help somebody with introductions and things like that. And the other thing that really didn't come up a lot in our conversation today that is around bias, and it's obviously a big factor in day-to-day dynamics and working world. And so something I've been trying to do more of, that I hope we can all do more of, is standing up for people in the moment. So if you see somebody's, an idea was not attributed to the right person, or someone's voice isn't being heard, standing up for them and bringing that up. It's hard to do it for yourself, but if you can say, oh, I heard Giovanna mention that earlier. I'd like to hear her say more about that, and, be there for each other to help really break that bias, which is, I think, the theme for the Women's Month this month. So I think that's something that I want to do more of, is look for those opportunities in the moment, because I think those are the times that are where we need to break the bias, is closer to the time when it happens, to really bring awareness to those things that are more subtle maybe and harder to see. So.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Margaret.
Well, I try to take advantage of, if I'm asked to do something like this, I say yes. So I was asked at my job to share my career journey with a group of our guest service agents. And so and out of that came an opportunity to talk to one of them about, she wanted to know more about my journey. So I took an hour out of my day to meet with her, and I would love to do more of that, more mentoring, more speaking, just sharing my own, what I've learned along the way. I'm not saying that I have all the experience, but I do have a story to share. So, taking advantage of those opportunities to share it. And I've done that before, where you pay for the person behind you in line, or had it happen to me. And it's the best feeling ever. Like when someone it feels, you're so surprised, and then you have to do it for the person behind you, because but that's not a burden. It's like, you're going to pay for coffee anyway, so you might as well just pay for someone else's. So
That's good. I am in awe of women who are constantly evolving and doing so much in the community, in their jobs. So it's very passionate for me when I interact with women like you all. And it helps me to continually want to grow and want to give and want to do something to share the stories. We talk about sharing our story. Margaret, that's a great point. I think anytime we're before a young woman or a woman who's just trying to get through, sometimes it's like, it's hard. They're trying to get through and they don't know how, and they don't know who to reach out to, that we take our experiences and our kind of expertise in a way to share with them. Like, it's going to be okay. And I interact with a lot of young women and a lot of women who are trying to figure it out. They're trying to change the trajectory of their lives. And it's a passion for me to make sure I put myself before women who are doing it, that I share other women's stories, that I share my story to help encourage. Start encouraging people to want to do whatever it is they want to do in life. But sometimes you can't see it, you can't be it if you don't see it. So if they see women of your caliber, women with your experiences who've made it in spite of or because of, I think that's honorable. So I'm going to close out with thanking you all. I appreciate you all answering the call, because sometimes that's what it is. To Margaret's point, sometimes just answer the call. And this is recorded, so I'll send you guys a copy if you want to share. And then I'll be posting pictures on Facebook and all my social media to show everything that you guys have done. I thank you all so much. And if you guys have any last words that you want to share, we can do so at this time.
I want to thank you, Christine, for inviting me to participate and inviting us to come together. I was not well for the past couple of weeks with a stomach virus that was beyond anything I've ever experienced. And leading up to this, I kept thinking, am I going to be strong enough? Am I going to be strong enough? And not only was I strong enough, this was inspiring. This has lit a fire under me that I haven't had for a while. So thank you very much. I am pleased to meet those of you on the panel who I've never met before. I look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn and perhaps having a coffee or a tea in person at some point in the future, someplace outside where we feel comfortable. And hopefully get to know you even better, because you are clearly some powerful, powerful women.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. I echo everything Marilyn just said, and want to really thank you, Christine, again for, I consider this paying it forward. I mean, you've given all of us a platform and a forum to speak and share our stories. Yeah, I thank you for that. And this takes practice. This takes practice. Being able to speak, because when you don't speak a lot, you lose it. So I appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah, the practice is very helpful. I was like, oh my God, I hope my internet stays up. That's my biggest thing. With that, I'm going to close and thank you all so much. I appreciate you all answering the call, and I want us to continue to pay it forward. Right? You guys have a great rest of your weekend.
You do as well. You too,
Bye-bye,
ladies. Thank you.
Me too.
Yes. Bye-bye.